gentlemen, and welcome to this episode of Behind the Wrestler. My guest this evening is none other than Abbey Gail. Thank you very much for taking the time out to shoot this little story about yourself. So we'll just jump straight into it. So first question that you're going to get asked multiple times in your pro wrestling life now is when, and where, and who inspired you to become a professional wrestler, and how did you get introduced into professional wrestling?
So first I was introduced to pro wrestling when I went to a friend's house and he wanted to watch pro wrestling. I'd never watched it before. I didn't grow up with TV, so it was a very new concept for me, and so I like new things, and I decided to, let's watch it, that would be cool. So that's how I got into pro wrestling, or the love of pro wrestling started. It was when Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman came out, and I really enjoyed watching him. Like Paul Heyman, he's got such an energy, he can sell anything, his character is on point. Brock Lesnar just came out and his music was so strong, and he just does that and he just looks like a really intimidating guy, and he does his suplexes, and it was amazing, and I was in awe. So that was my first introduction to pro wrestling. And my second introduction was how I fell in love with it and how I wanted to do pro wrestling. So that was Nikki Bella's match. I really enjoyed it because I resonate with females. She's a female, and she just really captured the arena with her performance.
So you not many people know, but you fast forward a couple of years from your introduction to pro wrestling, you went over for holiday to Holland, fell in love with the place and want to move back, and is currently in process of moving back, which is a week away. And you had your first taste of professional wrestling training with PWH. And so how was first day of training?
Well, I really just wanted to make the best impression I possibly could. I told my sister who lived in Holland, that this is what I wanted to do, and she was like, okay, Esther, you just need to go in there and you need to show them what's what. Not exactly, what's what, but what I can do, and that I want this. You've got to make yourself available, and this is what I want, so that people take notice of you and be like, oh, okay, well, this girl obviously, has ambition and wants to do it. So I walked in with my head high. I didn't know what I was getting into. It turned out that it was actually quite an easy first training, but the Holland Pro Wrestling has apparently the hardest ring in pro wrestling. So my first bump was very hard. So he was like, okay, so this is how you bump, and he did the hand movements, and I was like, okay, cool. He's like, make sure you tuck your head, and then he said again, he's like, make sure you tuck your head. I was like, okay. By the way, this is Tom said this. And so I didn't really prepare myself enough, I think, for the first bump, because that first bump really I went down and I got back up and I was so dizzy, and he was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, but out of my head. And then so I thought the next time would be easier. It was the same. The next time was the same. The third time was nicer. And the training, it really solidified that this is what I want to do. My love for it. They talked more about the business and about the different aspects of wrestling, of pro wrestling, that I didn't even comprehend, that I didn't think of, like crowd psychology, character development, and it just it really solidified that, you know, this is an amazing thing to do, and that it just made me passionate about it. Yeah.
Obviously, there's not many people know this, but the guys who are in PWH and like the trainers and stuff was old trainees of Graham Hughes. There's a funny story about Mr. Tenkwa, and Tenkwa, if you end up watching this, I think you know exactly what we're talking about.
Graham tells everyone.
Yeah, he does. You probably know exactly what we're talking about here. You were finishing up with your holiday, coming back home, only for a short amount of time, because you're like, yeah, I'm sold on this. This is what I want. And they told you to get in contact with Graham Hughes and come and train with the Hughes Academy.
Yes.
So what was the steps and processes with that, and how did it all come about?
Yeah. So after the training, my sister Wendy, she asked me, she was like, Esther, so you sure about this? And she didn't even need the answer. She answered herself straight on the spot. She was like, I can see it in your eyes, Esther. I can see it in the way you're walking. I can see it you're just a glow. She said that I have a glow about me. And I was like, Wendy, this is something I want to do. This is a life I want to lead. And she's like, okay, cool. And previously, before that, they had asked if I wanted to go to a show. So the next weekend in Holland, I went to my first wrestling show. It was so exciting. Just seeing their hard work and their training from when I saw it last week, then into that, into the show and the performance. Previously, before the show, we also had a training seminar where we was talking about crowd psychology with Joey Legend, which was a really great experience. My second week in wrestling, to meet someone who has trained people from WWE, who's been there, you know, has so many stories, and he passed down some really, really good, solid information to me that made me think more about my future in wrestling and what I needed to do. So from him, I definitely know that I needed to train, I needed to get stronger, my cardio was a bit down, I needed to be able to run the ropes. And so I went home to my sister after that, and we sat down that night. It was probably about 2 o'clock in the morning. By this point, we were both tired, and she writes a list for me about what I need to do to then move back to Holland, to then go into pro wrestling, because I was serious about it. This is what I wanted, and I needed a plan. I needed it written down. I like lists. And so part of it was saving money, going back home, getting my Dutch passport. So because in Holland you can't work without a passport. Well, you can, but it's very hard to get a job, also to find somewhere to live. I needed to learn Dutch, so I've been learning Dutch behind the scenes. I've been talking to Tom and Tenkwa behind the scenes. Also, so they set me up with Graham, and I didn't know that much about New Zealand pro wrestling at the time. And so they're like, well, Esther, what we would like you to do for pro wrestling is we would like you to go and train with Graham for 6 months, because I told them on the spot. They were like, well, when are you coming back? And I was like, I'll be here in April. And they're like, okay, like, not really knowing if I was completely serious. But I was like, no, I was dead set on it. I'm coming back in April. So they're like, well, we'll ask Graham to cram it for you. So for the last 6 months, for 3 months, I just set up my Dutch passport and setting up living in Holland for the first 3 months. And then the second 3 months, I spent training. And we crammed a lot into that training. I think I've learnt quite like a year's worth of moves in 3 months. I haven't perfected them, obviously, but I went home and I looked at YouTube videos and then went back to Graham and I was like, how do you do this move? How do you do this move? And one of the moves that I really loved, I fell in love with. This is definitely my favourite move by far, was the moonsault. If you've seen my Instagram, you'll know I am obsessed with moonsaults. So yeah, I got to learn how to do a moonsault. So that's how much we've crammed into this little space of time. And that's how I prepared for Holland.
You've had some experience on shows now. After training with Graham, you made your official pro wrestling debut on March 24th, 2018 against former Hughes Academy Women's Champion Frankie Quinn, and had your second match against Crystal Kane, another former Hughes Academy Women's Champion, which was about a month ago now, almost a month ago now, a couple of weeks down, yeah.
Yep.
And the preparation that you put in place to prepare for your first match against Frankie Quinn. How did you feel when you found out?
So when I found out that I was going to have 2 matches, I got so excited. I was like, yes, I get to prove myself. I was really eager to, put myself out there and just kind of, be like, this is the business I want to be in, and I'm ready for it. Give me anything. And so Graham, Timka and Tom kind of put that into play, the attitude that I had, and got me matches. So the first match, I didn't know that people go into their first match after a year or 2 years worth of training behind them. And so I think the nervousness before the match that I should have felt I felt normal nervousness, but I didn't feel the nervousness of, oh my gosh, I am such a rookie. I knew that I was a rookie. I knew that I was kind of ignorant to the business and to behind the scenes of pro wrestling and how many moves I know, and also because I haven't been watching wrestling since I was young, I obviously don't have the background that a lot of people do have. But I didn't have that weight on my shoulders when I went to go and verse Frankie. It was great because Graham beforehand told me about Frankie, and I'd met her, and I knew I was in safe hands. She's been wrestling for a long time and she knows what she's doing. So before the match, all I could really do was just go through the moves that I knew in my head every night and just actively try and calm my thoughts about it and try not to get nervous. So that's how I prepared really for the match. I just tried to be as calm as possible. I have a thing, before matches I like to listen to Disney music and I like to dance around behind stage, so that calms me down when kind of puts me in the mindset, when you're a child and nothing can touch you. You can do anything. You can flip off trees. You can jump off tramps onto the ground, and you don't really care about the consequences. So before I go on stage, I like to get into that mindset that I can just do anything, and hopefully it works out.
And for people who think that's a joke that she listens to Disney music, it's no joke. It is no joke. I am backstage and she is literally listening to Disney music and she is dancing.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Oh, there you go.
I am one of those people.
You want to build a snowman? She want to build a snowman.
I want to build a snowman.
And so, you had your debut match against Frankie Quinn, and she's, she's debuted multiple people.
Yeah.
What did you take away from your first match, now gearing up for your second match against Crystal Kane?
So what I had taken away was one, nervousness gets you nowhere. So before a match, even though I did feel that nervousness, for the second match I made sure that it was lessened, that I tried to be less nervous. Because when you are nervous, you tend to forget things. Thank goodness I didn't forget anything in Frankie's match. But you tend to forget things, you tend to stuff up technique sometimes, your character wanes a bit. And so that's one thing that I took that away from that match, is that you need to be very, very calm in yourself. And sure, you may not be sure, but there's a way that you can kind of trick your mind and be like, no, I'm sure. Like, if you say it enough times, it kind of comes into play. Also, another thing is that because I felt so safe with Frankie, I realised that I didn't need to worry about safety, and because the people that I was wrestling, they've done a lot of matches. So that was another thing, is to not be afraid of movement. So from my first match, I was a bit wary of trying suplexes, and I tried a fisherman on Frankie, but I didn't really take anything. She took most of it, and that transferred into the next match, where I was fine with taking bumps all the time. I was like, yeah, let's do it. So my confidence in the moves as well got up on this, higher. So that's definitely what I got from it, is that I definitely got the confidence that I could do bigger movements, that I was capable of it, and that I should do it. Yeah, so that's why I took it.
And you also, because I was backstage, I watched the footage over of you and Crystal Kane, and you actually ended up doing your move that you really wanted to do.
Yes, and
I did. Would you like to elaborate on the move that you got to do?
Okay. So before the match, Crystal, Kane and I were talking on Facebook about how pretty moonsaults were. And I'd been saying it to Robbie and you and Spencer. I was like, it'd be amazing if I could do a moonsault. And they were like, yeah, do it. Especially Robbie was like, yeah, you can do it. I had a background when I was little in gymnastics and ballet, so I'm quite flexible and I can do flips quite easily, whereas I hadn't done one for a while, so I had to relearn a bit, but I could do it within the first 10 minutes. I could do a backflip again. So when we got to the arena, to the school, I was talking to Crystal Kane backstage, and I was like, this is, I want to do it. And she turns around and she's like, Esther, do it. You can do it. We'll do it. Let's do it. And I was like, cool. So what we do is we put a crash mat out in the ring, and just for the first try, just so I can see that I can do one and that it's okay. So I get up on the ropes and I'm like, okay, everybody's watching, everybody's standing around the stage. And I stand there for a while trying to get over my fear. I've got a fear of landing on my head when I flip that I've had to get over recently, which is good, getting over your fears. So I was just breathing in and out and saying, Esther, you can do this. I was just telling myself over and over again in my head. And then so I do a moonsault onto the crash mat. I'm like, cool, I can do this. This is all good. This is easy, kind of. And so we take the crash mat out, and Chris was like, oh, do you want to practice it without the mat? And I was like, nah, we'll just do it on the time. So one thing I didn't want to do is, because we hadn't practiced with someone underneath me, and I do feel like safety is a big thing in pro wrestling, I didn't want to land on her, so we made it so that she would roll away and that I would just smack down on the ground and kind of own myself. because I didn't want to, break her neck or anything. That would be terrible for my second match. So with that second match, I was able to do a moonsault, and it looked so pretty. And afterwards, I was lying on the ground, I was like, fuck yeah. I can swear on this, can't I?
Yes,
yeah.
you can. Okay. And, obviously, that was like it's like sweet and bitter, because it was like, yeah, I got to do this, but also that was my last show in New Zealand, because you won't be here for the next one because you're going to be in Holland. And so, taking away from the experiences that you've had here with Graham, and being on shows, and being able to perform in front of a crowd, how is that going to motivate / help you over in Holland?
I think because Holland is a faraway country where people don't necessarily act the same, or even though it's still, a Western country, it's still very foreign to me. So I think performing in Hughes Academy really helped me, because I performed in front of a Kiwi audience. And also, I'm not saying that Holland is not like that, because I don't know. I only did one training with them. But Hughes Academy was really supportive of me. They were so encouraging, and it's definitely like a family. I found a family in Hughes Academy. So to feel that support before I went on stage, and then after I went on stage as well, it did build up my confidence that I could do, more than what I thought I could. Also, I thought everything was okay. Like before I did a move, or before I went on the match, I wasn't worried about that it wasn't going to be okay. Everybody was like, oh yeah, you'll do fine, you'll do fine, you'll do fine. So then I started believing it, because they were supporting me, and I was like, oh, okay, no, I'll do fine. So before I did, a hard move like the moonsault, I was like, I'll be fine. And I did it. So I think it was a really good first step. I think it was what I was meant to do, was to come back to New Zealand and to train under Graham. I think it was the best move I possibly could, and I've also made friends for life. So I think I will take that support back to Holland, and I will, go to Holland with confidence, and it won't be so foreign, because I will have the support from the wrestlers in New Zealand. I'm not isolated. Well, not that I don't feel isolated over there.
Oh, we all know Graham's going to message Tenkwa.
Yeah, definitely.
We all know this. What's your goal in professional wrestling?
My goal in professional wrestling, so obviously I would love to go to the WWE. That's my professional wrestling goal, but that's not the main one. What I want to do is, I just want to entertain people. I just want to make their day better. I also want to, when I get to WWE, is I want to use that influence to then help other people reach their goals. And so that's my life goal, is to help other people reach their goals and feel confident in themselves, and just to help them along.
If the opportunity came up for WWE or tryout or anything to do with that, would you hesitate to take it?
No, not at all. I would go for it. I'll jump 2 feet in, definitely. I definitely will. I'm training for that now, so I'm trying to be ready. Hopefully by the time they ask me, I'll be ready.
What's next for Abbey Gail?
I'm not too sure about that. I would love to say, going to WWE or Ring of Honor, or gone to the Indies around Japan or something like that. But I think I have a lot of growing to do. I think I've still got a long way to go, a lot of training, a lot of character development. My crowd psychology needs to definitely up itself. But I'm really excited. I'm really excited to learn new things about pro wrestling. There's just every little bit of information just kind of puts a piece of the puzzle together that is going to be my future. And I think there's something amazing in that. So it's going to be my future.
Do you have a dream match or a dream opponent that you would like to face in the near future?
Dream match.
Is it with Nikki Bella?
No. I, don't get me wrong, still love Nikki Bella. She was my first female star that I just absolutely loved. But I think my dream match would be with Charlotte. She's just how far she's come, and she's so technical. She's got her character down pat. She's just so clean with her matches. I really admire Charlotte. Yeah.
Thank you very much for taking the time out and giving a little inside backstory on who Abbey Gail is and what can we expect from her in the near future. This has been Behind the Wrestler, presented by the Hughes Academy, and until next time.